Hi all. If you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. My name is Amira, and today guys, I am finally going to be giving you my thoughts on the Natasha Denona I Need a Nude palette. Now I know I'm super late with this. I have many excuses. I won't say I have no excuses, but I have many. Your girl's been busy. I've been working, but I've got days off. I am off for 5 days. I mean, that's including the weekend, but I count the weekend. Do you count the weekend on your vacations? Because I completely count the weekend on my vacation. So yeah, so this is giving me a chance to get a lot of things done. And the upside of not being able to film with this palette right away is that it gave me a chance to not just do a first impressions for you guys, because I wound up wearing this palette. I decided, since I couldn't do a quickie like first impressions demo for you, that I would do a more in-depth review. I would take that time and use it wisely. And so I wore this palette for a week straight. And I definitely have some thoughts. So let's get into it. And I'm going to do a little demo. It's going to be super quick, but I want to do a demo of sort of how I've been using this palette, but also talking to you about my feelings about this palette after having used it for a week straight. So I'm going to go in with a rougher 15, and I'm going to take the shades Stone and Tender, so these lighter shades here, and they look lighter on camera. I mean, they're light, let's be real, but they look even lighter on camera. And I'm just going to go over my entire lid with these. So gang, when I bought this palette, when I first saw the pictures for it, I was like, oh, this is like a more neutral version of the Glam palette. Like, the Glam palette is quite cool, although I will say I've seen some people do some comparisons, and one of the videos I saw, they took the background of the Glam palette, like the actual background that the shadows are like laid in, and they made it black. And one thing I noticed, and that they mentioned and I noticed immediately, was how actually neutrally warm that palette can be, because the golds that are in it are actually quite neutral. And I was a bit shocked by that, because I originally was going to get the Glam palette. It was like on my one day I'll purchase list. And I wound up taking it off because I'm like, well, I love cool tones, but I just don't think I'll get enough use out of that palette. So I have mixed Tender and Stone here. So you guys want in even more. It's about as close as I can get you though. And I've blended them all over the lid. And now I'm going to go in with, what shade do I want to use? I'm going to go in with Ella. And Ella is this shade right here, which looks much deeper in pan than it is actually on the eye. So I'm just going to put this all over. And as you can see, I've already done my face makeup because I was filming a foundation review. So I was like, well, I'll get all that done and I can do a quick demo for you guys. And the reason why I'm doing the demo really quickly, because I really want to get to my thoughts about this palette, because I have more than I was anticipating having. So yeah, so this is Ella, and I'm applying it with my fingers, and I'm kind of doing what I was doing with this palette all week. And I was really trying to use it in the way that I know that most people will use it when they purchase it, and the way that I, as someone who does YouTube, but I also work a regular job and I don't have time to do super editorial looks most days anymore, you know, so I have to sort of, you know, dole out my time in wiser ways, and I don't really have time to spend doing like a super editorial look. Natasha has done some really beautiful editorial looks with this palette. So I would say if you're looking for like really fun editorial looks, the Instagram account for the makeup brand itself is a great place to go. I'm now taking both of those shades, mostly Tender though, because it's a little bit deeper, mixed with a little bit of sun, and I'm going to apply that around the lower lash line. like that, and super subtle. That's and soft. And this is a rougher number 26, which is kind of big for my lower lash line, but I like to use this because it kind of keeps it from, it just kind of smokes it out without you having to actually smoke it out because of the size of it. And I'm going to take that number 15 again and just kind of blend up a little bit more. There we go. Perfect, perfect. And then for my inner corner, I'm going to take this exact same number 26 brush, and I'm going to go into Travertine or Whisper. Let's go into Whisper because it's got a little bit more of a contrast to it for this look. There we go. How pretty is that? And then I'm going to take my mascara, and I have a new mascara, guys. I have this new YSL. I wasn't in the market for, well, I'll put it this way. I have been in the market for a brown mascara. I haven't been in the market for like a black one, but I've been looking for a decent brown mascara for a while, and I've tried 2 drugstore ones that I just haven't really loved. And I really was like, okay, maybe I need to like spend a little more. And Macy's was having a sale on the YSL. They were having a sale on all of their makeup. It was, I think, 15% off all makeup, all beauty. And the YSL Lash Clash was on sale. And I heard a couple of people talking about the brown being really brown and being really beautiful. So I'm like, okay. So this is my first time trying it on camera with you guys. It is very brown. I will say that. I like that. It's probably even lighter than my brows. My brows are like a dark brown. But putting this on, it actually feels like it's even lighter than my brows. I mean, why do I keep saying brows? Lashes. Lashes. So that's interesting. Like most brown mascaras are almost, they're like, they call them brown black. They're really just like a slightly lighter black. They're not, there's no brown to be found in them. This one feels very much, it looks very much brown, and when I'm applying it, it's lightening my lashes. So it is actually distributing color to them, which is nice. This is, of course, a first impressions of this mascara, so I can't give you my like full thoughts because, you know, mascaras need time to mature before you can really know what they're made of. But this is definitely a brown mascara, and I can see how brown it is. Like, I'm looking at it and I don't feel like I'm looking at just a black mascara that's masquerading as a brown. Now I have one from Maybelline that's darker than this one, and I like the color, I just don't like the formula. So it's like, if I could just get both, you know. All right, do you see how soft that is? That's pretty. All right, I'm going to put a lippy on really quickly. I'm gonna do the Pat McGrath Nude Romantique 2. Got this recently. I'm not gonna lie, guys, I've been shopping more than I really had intended on shopping, but there's been so many good like sales and deals and discounts, and I just kind of like, and I don't know how much I'll be shopping later on in the year, so I'm just kind of like, yeah, you know. Alrighty, applying this, and this is quite pink. I could probably go on neutral, but I have it here and it's pretty, and I hadn't run it on camera yet, so why not? It's definitely very pink compared to the eye. That's okay. Alright, I'm going to zoom you guys out and we'll chit chat. Okay, so as you guys saw, that was a really easy, quick look. This is basically kind of how I've been using this palette. I will say the first time that I used the palette, I was quite underwhelmed. And I have some pictures. I don't know if I have pictures of every look I did during the week, but I have pictures of most of the looks. And you will see a theme with these looks, and we're, you know, I'm gonna you know, talk about that. But what I wanted to say is just a tip, if you have this palette, if you're planning on getting this palette, if you're struggling maybe with this palette. The first time I used this palette, I used synthetic brushes, and I just was not getting the I just felt like I wasn't getting enough actual pigment onto my eye. I wasn't feeling like I was getting enough it wasn't blending properly, and it felt really weird. I was like, this doesn't feel like Natasha's normal formula. And at first I was thinking it was the palette. So the next day I was like, okay, let me just switch up the brushes and see if that's the issue. And that was the issue. I switched from synthetic brushes to using my rougher brushes, and it was night and day as far as the way that the shadows applied and blended. And now I will say these mattes in this palette are quite, what's the word, powdery. And so I feel like because of that, a natural hair brush will hold on to that pigment more than it just sort of flying off into the ether or flying off your eye. You know what I mean? So I think that if you are interested in this palette, and I would say if you don't have some natural hair brushes, maybe invest in some. There's some really affordable ones. Rougher's a great option. But if you do have natural hair brushes, just stick to your natural hair brushes while using these shadows. So that's my one little tip of me being on the struggle bus at the beginning with this palette. Now, getting into the nitty gritty. I have to say, for me, this palette was a letdown, just overall. I was expecting more. I was wanting more. The color story, I thought I would get more from. And as I was using it throughout the week, the thing that kept coming back to me was, and of course my eye on stage now, is that this is not a palette that is really meant for deeper skin tones. Not just someone deeper than me, but even me to a certain extent. And what I mean by that is, it's not that the shadows aren't pigmented, it's not that they don't apply, although that's a little bit of the issue. It's that some of them are so light that they're just not going to show up on certain skin tones. They barely showed up on mine. But what I mean by that is this palette does not have enough contrast in it. It just does not have enough contrast. The deepest shade is a super dark brown. These shades here, like this shade Wit and Tender and Vague, these are dark tones for light skin tones. On me, this shade reads quite light. I mean, you can see it on my finger. It reads quite light, and it reads almost, it's got such a red undertone. So do you see how light that is? And then blend it out on my eye. That is not a deepening shade. So the only deepening shade that is an option is the dark brown for me, and that is Silhouette. But I don't necessarily always want to put a dark brown on my eye. I don't necessarily want to immediately make my eye a smoky eye. So that left me sort of floundering with how to get the most out of this palette and make it useful in the sense of giving me enough contrast and dimension and depth in the looks that I could attain, especially because I have slightly hooded eyes. And so for me, I need shadows that can kind of give that depth without them having to be like brown or black. You know, like if she had put in a shade that was just like half a shade to a shade deeper than this, but not this one, like it didn't have to be a dark brown. If it was literally just Vague that was slightly less vague, you know what I mean? If it was just a little richer, a little deeper, it would have been perfect. But I just found myself struggling to get any kind of depth from this palette without reaching for that brown. So what I did is I started to get a little creative, and I would still use, you know, Silhouette, but I would use it as like to line my lash line to give my eyes a bit more depth on the outer corners. But the rest of the eye was still felt quite, what's the word I'm looking for? Unstructured, you know, like I just didn't feel like I had enough dimension in my eyes. And that's something that I look for because I have hooded eyes. I'm always looking for something that will sort of lift, that will sort of trick the eye a little bit and give me a little bit more of a crease. Like I don't have a monolid. I don't have super heavily hooded eyes, but as you can see, my eyes are hooded. When my eyes are down, you can't really see my lid. So I'm always looking for something that I can use that is maybe not too deep, that will visually lift my eyes and give them that dimension. There wasn't a lot for me to do that with. Now you see what I did here is that I used those two shades, and what I really did by using this number 15 is I went quite heavy in the crease, and the lid, and then I blew it out at the tops. That's how I was able to sort of fudge that. But it's still, as you can see, it's still not a super deep eye look. What you're mostly seeing is the shimmer on my eyes. So that was disappointing, and it kind of, I felt very limited and boxed in because of that. Then we get into the shimmers. These shimmers look so frosted on deep skin, on medium tan, not even deep, because my skin is not super deep. My skin is medium tan. From medium tan to deep, these shades look so frosted. All of them have this undertone of silver in them, which if you have a lighter skin tone can look really soft, can look blown out, can look wet, can give the eye this sort of beautiful, like sparkly dimension. That is not how they look on deep skin tones or deeper skin tones. They look frosted and they lose a lot of their color depth. These shades here, I will tell you that the shade Travertine and Whisper look virtually the same on my skin. One is just slightly brighter than the other. Mia just looks like silvery frost on me. Silvery frost. I tried this maybe twice and I was just like, absolutely not. Delilah is the same. Did I say Delilah? I don't think. Delilah is basically the same as these two shades, but just looser. It has more silver sparkle, so that it lends itself to even more silver frost on my eye. And then you have this shade Sheen, which does absolutely nothing for my skin tone. Like, it's pretty, it would actually be prettier as a highlighter than it looks on my eye, because I can put it in the inner corner, it's fine, but this is literally just an inner corner highlight, or maybe a brow bone highlight here. I'll apply this here so you guys can see what it looks like on me. And I did use the shade in Looks, but do you see how silvery that is on me? I can't apply that all over my lid or like on my lid itself. It just looks like, it just looks frosted. It looks not nice in my opinion. I don't really love frosted shadows on me. So then you have the shade Muse, which is this shade here. Really pretty, and it is that texture that she had in the Yucca palette. You know, that sort of slightly loose. It's not a glitter, but it's like a slightly softer pressed metallic that has some texture to it. This is what that formula is in this palette. And do you see how silvery that is? Again, very silvery, right? Not going to look that silvery on someone with lighter skin. Then you have the shades Filigree and Ella. And this was basically the shades that I lived with. This is Filigree. And again, it's similar to Muse. It's a little softer than Muse. And that sort of slightly looser pan, the slightly looser press. So this is Filigree, the darker one. And then this is Ella. And that's what I have on my lid. These are basically the only two shimmers in this palette, besides maybe Travertine. And Travertine is so soft. Let me see, and I think I have some hard pin here because I'm touching it so much, but hold on. Okay, so do you see how softly pressed that is? This is Travertine, or how light that is. Just so... Do you see what I mean here? And then we have shades like Fair and Mesh. This is Fair, it's a matte, and Mesh. Can you see? You can't even see those, right? So, you see my dilemma here. Now, I think this is a beautiful palette, and I've seen the looks that Natasha has created with this on her, on the Instagram for the brand. They're beautiful. But also, the one thing that I did notice is that there is one deeper, and not deep, super deep skin tone model in those pictures. And the main shade that is on her eyes, that they created this really bold sort of, almost graphic liner, but like a blown out graphic liner, like in the crease, was Silhouette. They used Silhouette and Ella, which is what I said I had to use because those are the shades that really showed up on my skin in a way that was flattering to me. So, my point being, this is a $69 palette. If you are of a lighter skin tone, I think this palette will be beautiful for you. I think it will give you tons of dimension. I think those shimmers will look super wet and beautiful. If you're my skin tone or deeper, skip it. Skip it, guys. It's not going to give you your money's worth. And that's really what it comes down to, is I don't feel like I'm getting my money's worth out of this palette. I also recently bought the Starlit palette. And this palette I was using pretty much exclusively before this one came out. And you know, they came out pretty quickly. Like this one came out and then this one was leaked. And then it came out like, what, a couple of weeks later. So we didn't have a whole lot of time between these. So I had this very present in my mind. It was sitting in my little capsule basket, which don't worry guys, I am going to be doing a September capsule. I think I'm going to do that as like a pick my makeup on my Instagram stories so look out for that if you follow me. My Instagram handle will be in the description box, but I think I'm going to do have you guys pick my makeup for my September capsule, because I don't know what I want to put in it. So there's that. So tangent aside, I feel like I get more out of this palette than I do out of that palette. This palette is $27. This one is $69. So again, the issue is not Natasha's quality. Natasha has one of my favorite eyeshadow formulas. I'm a Natasha Denona fan, but I do feel like this is not a palette that was meant for me or anyone my skin tone or deeper. It just wasn't. And I think she tried to market it that it could be used universally, but it's not a universal palette, guys. It's just not. And I thought that, I knew looking at it that it was probably not going to work for deeper skin tones. Like that was a given. But I was like, well, will it work for my skin tone? And that's really what intrigued me enough to purchase this. I really wanted to know if I could get use out of this, because I do like the color story. I think it's a beautiful color story. But no, I'm using the same shadows, and I tried to move out of, with the looks that I did over that week, I tried to move out of my own, you know, like I was using a lot of the same shades, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try to get these shades to work. And honestly, guys, I would say most of the week I was really meh and underwhelmed with how my makeup looked. And you know how terrible it is when you're wearing makeup that makes you just feel kind of meh. That's how I felt the majority of the time that I was wearing this palette this week. But I'm so glad that I had the time. It wasn't planned, but I had the time to really use this palette and try the majority of the shades, because I did use the majority of this palette. It wasn't that I wasn't using it. It was that I was trying to get them to work for me and try to get them to show up on my skin tone in a way that was flattering and in a way that gave my eyes some kind of dimension. And a lot of the times I failed at it. And I don't think, you know, I'm not saying that I'm not a professional makeup artist, but I'm not a novice in that way. I can do a great eyeshadow look, and I know how to blend and how to find tones that work for me and make them work for me. And, you know, one of the reasons why I mix Tinder and Stone is because Stone on its own looks quite gray on me. So by mixing it with Tinder, it gives me a little bit more of a neutral tone. It's a little less gray, and I do like this eye look. Like, I think it's pretty, but I don't feel like this is something that I couldn't find with a million other things that I already own. You know, like this isn't unique enough to justify the $69 price tag of this palette. So, in conclusion, do I think this is a palette worth owning? If you are of a lighter skin tone, sure, absolutely, it's pretty. The formulas are great. I have no qualm saying that. I'm not bashing the formula at all. I think the formula is great. The usability factor across the board is not. So that is my review, guys, of this palette. Let me know in the comments down below. Have you purchased this? Were you waiting for more reviews? Were you waiting for reviews of someone of my skin tone or deeper? Have I talked you into it? Have I talked you out of it? Let me know in the comments down below, guys, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.